Welcome back. Tonight's story is about a man who watched his best friend stand beside him at the altar, raise his son for 12 years, and call him brother, while carrying a secret that lived in the boy's blood. He did not yell. He ordered a second test. Pour the coffee. Stay close. My best friend slept with my bride the night before our wedding, and 12 years later, the lab report landed on my desk. My name is Daniel Hollis. I am 47 years old. I work as a senior genetic counselor at a teaching hospital in Rochester, Minnesota, the kind of place where the hallways smell faintly of warm paper and floor polish, and the elevators always seem to arrive a beat too slow. On a Thursday in late October, my son Eli came in for a routine pediatric workup because he had been getting these strange bruises on his shins that did not match the games he played. He was 11. He liked otters. He still let me kiss the top of his head in public. I ordered the panel myself. I should not have. There is a rule about not ordering tests for your own family, and I broke it because I was tired and worried, and I trusted my own hands more than anyone else's. The blood type came back first. A boy with my blood type and his mother's blood type cannot have the blood type my son had. Cannot. Not unlikely. Not rare. Cannot. I sat at my desk for a long time. I did not call my wife. I did not call my friend. I rewrote the order under a different physician's name and waited. If your gut already knows where this is going, tell me in the comments where you are watching from tonight. I want to know who is sitting with me on this one. We lived in a yellow house on a street called Linden, 3 blocks from the lake. From the outside, it looked like the kind of life that gets photographed for a hospital fundraiser brochure. A wife who taught 3rd grade. A son who built model rockets in the garage. A golden retriever named Banjo who slept across the doorway like he was guarding the place. My wife's name was Claire. She had a laugh that filled rooms and a habit of touching the back of my neck when she walked past me in the kitchen. My best friend's name was Marcus Bell. He had been my best friend since the 7th grade, when he gave me half his sandwich on a bus ride to a science fair and never once asked for it back. He was the godfather. He was the one who taught Eli to throw a curveball in the driveway. He was the one who came over on Sundays with a bag of bagels and 3 kinds of cream cheese because he could not remember which one Claire actually liked. We called him Uncle Marcus. Eli drew him cards on his birthday. Eli once said, at 6 years old with a juice box in his hand, that Uncle Marcus and Daddy had the same eyes. Claire had laughed and changed the subject and gone to the kitchen for a napkin nobody needed. I remember that moment now. I remember it the way you remember the second before a car hits you. There were other moments, small ones. The way Marcus stood a little too close to her at backyard barbecues. The way Claire's voice dropped half an octave when she said his name. The way they had a private joke about a song from college that I had never heard, and every time it came on the radio, they both went quiet at the same second, like a cue had passed between them in a room I was not in. I noticed it. I filed it under nothing. I told myself I was a small man if I let my mind go there, and so my mind did not go there for 12 years. Our wedding was in June of 2013. The rehearsal dinner was at a steakhouse with green leather booths and waiters who refilled water glasses without asking. Marcus gave a toast that made Claire cry. He said I was the best man he had ever known. He said any woman would be lucky to walk down an aisle toward me. He raised his glass and looked her in the eye when he said it. I remember thinking what a good friend I had. That was a Friday. The wedding was Saturday at 3. What I did not know on Friday night, what I would not know for 12 years, was that after the steakhouse closed and the parents went back to the hotel, Claire and Marcus drove to his apartment together because she had left her overnight bag there earlier that week and needed it back before the morning. That is the story she told me on Sunday. That was the story I believed. I want to tell you about the first time Eli was sick. He was 2. A fever that climbed all night. Claire and I sat on the bathroom floor and ran a cool washcloth across his back, and she cried softly and said, "Please, please, please," in a whisper, over and over again, like a prayer with no name on it. I thought she was begging God. I think now she was begging something else. Eli got better. The fever broke at 4 in the morning. Marcus came over the next day with a stuffed otter the size of a small dog because Eli had been afraid of the dark, and otters held hands when they slept so they would not drift apart in the river. Eli slept with that otter for 9 years. He named it Belle. We never asked why. The triggering moment, the one that started the slow unraveling, was so small you would not have seen it from across the room. It was a Tuesday in early October. Eli came in from soccer practice with a bruise on his shin the size of a plum, and another one on his forearm shaped like a thumbprint, and a third one on the inside of his thigh that he could not remember getting. Claire said, "Boy's bruise." The pediatrician said, "Let us run a panel." I said I would order it myself because I worked in the hospital, and I could move it through faster. Claire went very still when I said that, a still I had never seen in her before. Then she smiled and said, "Of course, sweetheart, that makes sense." She kissed the side of my face and went into the kitchen and ran the faucet for longer than the dishes needed. I did not catch it then. I caught it later, in the replay, the way you always do. The day the first result came back, I was sitting at my desk eating a turkey sandwich from the cafeteria. The blood type line was the third one down on the report. I read it. I read it again. I put the sandwich down. I read it a third time. My mouth tasted like copper and bread. Claire is O negative. I am O negative. 2 O negative parents cannot produce a child with any blood type other than O. My son was AB positive. I sat there for what felt like an hour and was probably 4 minutes. The cafeteria smell drifted in from the hallway, that warm, institutional smell of green beans and gravy, and somewhere down the corridor a phone was ringing and nobody was picking it up. A nurse I had known for 9 years walked past my open door and waved, and I waved back, and I do not remember if I smiled. I did not feel anger first. I felt a kind of cold that started at the base of my neck and traveled down to the soles of my feet. 12 years. The bagels on Sundays, the toast at the rehearsal dinner, the way she said his name, the stuffed otter, the juice box, the same eyes. I thought about calling her. I thought about driving home and walking through the front door and asking her one question. I did not do that. I am a careful man. I am a man whose entire profession is built on not telling a family what is true until you are certain it is true, because the moment you say it, you cannot unsay it. So I did something else. I rewrote the order under the name of a colleague who owed me a favor and did not ask questions. I sent the sample to a different lab. I asked for a full paternity index. I marked it urgent, and I waited. That night I came home and ate the pot roast Claire had made and complimented the carrots. Eli told me about a kid at school who could fold his tongue into a clover shape. Marcus called at 7:30 and asked if we wanted to go to a Twins game on Saturday. Claire said yes before I could answer. I went to bed and lay next to my wife of 12 years and listened to her breathing and counted the seconds between breaths until I fell asleep. The second report came back 9 days later. There is a number on a paternity test called the Combined Paternity Index. If a man is the biological father, the number is in the millions. If he is not, the number is 0. The number on the report next to my name was 0. The probability of paternity was listed at 0.00%. There was a small black line where the rest of the number should have been. I sat at my desk. I closed the door. I did not cry. I had cried already, quietly, in my car, in the parking lot of a gas station off Route 52 the week before, when the first result came in, and I knew what the second one would say. By the time the paper was in my hand, the crying was done. What I felt instead was a clarity so cold and so complete that I almost did not recognize myself inside it. If you have ever loved a child who turned out to belong to someone else's lie, drop a 1 in the comments. I want to know I am not the only one who has held that piece of paper. I did not confront Claire that night. I did not confront Marcus. I did something my training had taught me to do without thinking. I built a file. I requested Marcus's blood type from his last physical, which he had done at our hospital because I had recommended his doctor, a positive, consistent with the AB positive child. I pulled the old hospital records from Eli's birth. I noted the dates. I went back to my own calendar from 2013, the one Claire had kept on the kitchen wall in her loopy handwriting, the one I had taken with us through 3 moves because it had the date of our first dance circled in red ink. I found the rehearsal dinner. I found the next morning. I counted 9 months forward. The math was the math. Then I called a lawyer named Teresa Quinn, who had handled my mother's estate. I told her everything in one long sentence, and then I stopped talking. She let the silence sit. She said, "Daniel, before you do anything, I need you to know that you are allowed to take your time, and I need you to know that the boy is still your son in every way that matters except one, and we will figure out what to do about that one." I sat in my car after the call, and I put my forehead against the steering wheel, and I let myself shake for 90 seconds. Then I started the engine. For 3 weeks, I lived 2 lives. In the morning, I poured Eli's cereal and signed his permission slips, and listened to him read aloud from a book about a boy who could talk to whales. At work, I gathered records. I wrote down dates. I pulled my own DNA and ran it against Eli's, and put the printout in a folder I kept in a locked drawer in my office. The folder had a green tab. I had labeled it with one word in blue pen. The word was Eli. I did not stop loving him. I want you to hear that. The loving did not change. What changed was the shape of the room I was standing in. Claire began to notice that I was quiet. She asked if work was hard. I said yes. She rubbed my shoulders one night while I sat at the kitchen table, and I had to hold my coffee cup with both hands so I would not flinch. Marcus came over on a Sunday with the bagels and 3 kinds of cream cheese, and I watched him hug my son in the front hallway, and I smiled and I asked him how the new job was going, and I made him a fresh pot of coffee. He had no idea. Neither of them did. The moment I chose was a Saturday in November. Claire's parents were coming for dinner. Marcus was coming. Claire had made a brisket and lit the good candles. The dining room smelled like rosemary and warm bread, and the citrus polish she used on the table once a month. Eli was upstairs because we had told him it was a grown-up dinner and he could eat early and watch a movie in our bed. He had hugged Marcus on the way up the stairs. Marcus had ruffled his hair, the same eyes. I waited until dessert. Claire's mother was telling a story about a neighbor's dog. Her father was on his 2nd glass of wine. Marcus was laughing with his head tipped back, the way he always did. The way he had laughed at the rehearsal dinner 12 years ago when he raised his glass and looked her in the eye and called me the best man he had ever known. I set the green folder on the table next to the bread basket. The room did not go quiet right away. Claire's mother kept talking for another sentence and a half before she noticed that nobody was listening. Marcus looked at the folder and looked at me and tried a small, confused smile, the kind a man tries when he does not yet know if he should be afraid. Claire saw the folder and her hand stopped moving halfway to her wine glass. She knew. The body knows before the mind admits. I did not raise my voice. I did not stand up. I opened the folder and I slid 1 page across the table toward Marcus. Then I slid 1 page across the table toward Claire. Then I put my hands flat on the wood the way my own father used to put his hands flat on the wood when he was about to say something he had thought about for a long time. I said, 12 years ago, the night before our wedding, the 2 of you went back to Marcus's apartment to get a bag. I said, I believe that story for 12 years, because I am the kind of man who believes the people he loves. I said, Eli is 11. I said, the number on the page in front of you, Marcus, is the probability that you are his father. The number is 99.99%. The number on the page in front of you, Claire, is the probability that I am his father. The number is 0. Claire made a sound that was not a word. Marcus did not move. His face did the thing faces do when a man realizes he has been seen all the way through, and there is no version of the next sentence that lets him out of the room. I said, "You stood next to me at the altar." I said, "You held him on the day he was born." I said, "You called him your godson, and you taught him to throw a curveball, and you bought him a stuffed otter because you knew he was afraid of the dark, and every time you walked into this house for 12 years, you walked in as a guest, and you knew, and you let me raise the child you made the night before you watched me marry her." I said one more thing. I said, "Do you remember what you said in your toast?" I said, "You said that any woman would be lucky to walk down an aisle toward me." I said, "She was already walking toward you." Then I stood up. I closed the folder. I went upstairs to my son, who was asleep on top of our bed with a book about whales open on his chest, and I sat next to him for a long time, and I watched him breathe. If you have stayed with me through this, thank you. Tell me in the comments what part of the story stayed with you the most. I read every single one. I did not throw them out of the house that night. I asked them to leave the table. I told Claire to sleep in the guest room. I told Marcus to be at Teresa Quinn's office on Monday at 9. He was. He cried. He said he had wanted to tell me 1,000 times. I said 1,000 times is a number a man uses when he means 0. The divorce was quiet. The custody was not contested in the legal sense because the law and the heart do not always agree. And the law said one thing and the heart said another, and I made my peace with the heart. Eli stayed with me 4 nights a week. He still does. He is 12 now. He knows. We told him together, the 3 of us, in Teresa's office, with a counselor in the room, in language a child could carry. He cried. He asked if I was still his dad. I said, "I have been your dad since the night you ran a fever and I sat on the bathroom floor with you, and I will be your dad for the rest of my life, and nothing on any piece of paper in any drawer in any office in the world gets to change that." He climbed into my lap. He was too big to climb into my lap. He climbed in anyway. On the drive home from Teresa's office that day, the sky was that flat Minnesota gray that does not give you any information about whether it is going to snow. Eli was asleep in the back seat. I talked quietly to a younger version of myself, the one who was 22 and sitting on a bus next to a boy named Marcus who had just handed him half a sandwich. I told that younger man that the people you trust most are sometimes the ones who will cost you the most, and that the cost is not the end of you. I told him that being lied to by the people you loved does not make you a fool. It makes you someone who was capable of love in a room where someone else was not. I told him that the boy in the back seat is still his son, that blood is a fact and fatherhood is a choice, and he made the choice 11 years ago, and he is going to make it again every morning for the rest of his life. I told him to drive carefully. The roads were starting to ice.